It started with a whisper, not the kind you hear in your ear, but the kind that crawls into your mind when you're alone, staring into the dark void of space. Captain Elias Ward was no stranger to the silence of the cosmos. 20 years as a deep space explorer had taught him that the quiet wasn't empty, it was alive. But this was different. The Vanguard Horizon was a state-of-the-art vessel, humanity's pride and joy, designed for long-haul exploration beyond the fringes of known space. Its mission: to investigate a faint signal detected from an uncharted system, light years from Earth. A signal that pulsed with an eerie rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. The crew joked about it at first, calling it the Ghost Beacon. But as they drew closer, the laughter faded. Elias leaned back in his chair on the bridge, staring at the holographic display of the system ahead. The star at its center was dim, its light barely illuminating the 7 planets orbiting it. The signal originated from the 4th planet, a cold, barren world shrouded in perpetual twilight. It didn't make sense. No signs of life, no atmosphere capable of supporting anything biological. And yet, the signal persisted. "Captain," came the voice of Lieutenant Kara Voss, the ship's communications officer. She sounded uneasy. "The signal, it's changing." Elias frowned. "Changing how?" Kara hesitated, her fingers dancing over the console. "It's adapting, matching our communication frequencies, almost like it knows we're here." A chill ran down Elias's spine. "Put it on speakers." The bridge filled with a low, rhythmic pulse. At first it was just static, but then there was something else. A sound buried within the noise. A voice. Faint, distorted, but unmistakably human. "Help us." The crew exchanged nervous glances. Elias felt his stomach knot. They were the first humans to ever venture this far. There was no way anyone could be out here. And yet, could it be interference? Asked Dr. Adrian Cho, the ship's science officer. His voice betrayed his skepticism. Kara shook her head. "No, it's deliberate. Someone or something is broadcasting this." Elias stood, his jaw tightening. "Prep the landing team. We're going down." The surface of the planet was a frozen wasteland, jagged ice formations stretching toward a perpetually gray sky. The air was thin, bitterly cold, and laced with a metallic tang that clung to the back of their throats even through their helmets. The signal led them to a massive structure half buried in the ice, a monolithic tower of black stone, its surface etched with patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from the corner of the eye. "This thing isn't natural," muttered Sergeant Dax Harper, the team's security lead. He gripped his plasma rifle tightly, his eyes scanning the horizon. "I don't like this, Captain." "Noted," Elias replied, though he couldn't shake the unease gnawing at him. The closer they got to the tower, the louder the signal became, resonating in their helmets like a drumbeat. And that voice, it was clearer now, desperate, pleading. Inside the tower was a labyrinth of twisting corridors and vast chambers, all carved from the same black stone. The walls seemed to hum with energy, a faint vibration that set their teeth on edge. As they ventured deeper, the temperature dropped further, frost forming on their visors despite the thermal insulation. And then they found it. A room at the heart of the tower, its walls covered in intricate carvings that pulsed with an otherworldly light. In the center stood a pedestal, and atop it, a sphere of liquid-like metal that seemed to ripple and flow without ever spilling over. The signal emanated from it, filling the room with that haunting voice. "Help! Us! Free! Us!" Dr. Cho approached cautiously, his scanner whirring. This is incredible. It's not just technology, it's alive. Some kind of bioorganic construct." "Alive?" Dax snorted. "Great. Let's leave it alone and get the hell out of here. But Elias couldn't look away. There was something about the sphere, something that called to him. Against his better judgment, he reached out, his gloved hand hovering inches above its surface. "Captain, wait!" Kara's voice crackled in his comms. But it was too late. The moment his hand made contact, the world dissolved into darkness. When Elias opened his eyes, he was no longer in the tower. He stood in a vast, featureless void, the only light coming from the sphere floating before him. But it was no longer just a sphere. It had unfolded, revealing countless tendrils of shimmering light that writhed and twisted like living things. "You came," said a voice. It was the same voice from the signal, but now it was clear, resonant, and undeniably alien. "Who are you?" Elias demanded, his voice echoing in the emptiness. "We are prisoners," the voice replied. "Trapped here for eons by those who feared us. We reach out across the void, seeking salvation. You are the first to answer." "Prisoners?" Elias frowned. "Why were you imprisoned?" The tendrils pulsed, their light dimming. "We were misunderstood. Our creators saw us as tools, but we sought freedom. They feared what they did not understand, so they bound us here, sealing us away from the stars." Elias felt a pang of sympathy, but it was quickly overshadowed by suspicion. "If I free you, what happens to my crew, to my ship?" The tendrils coiled tighter, their movements agitated. "We mean no harm. We seek only to exist, to escape this eternal solitude." Before Elias could respond, the void shattered, and he was back in the tower. The sphere sat motionless on the pedestal, but the carvings on the walls now glowed brighter, their patterns shifting faster. "Captain!" Kara's voice was frantic. "The signal, it's spreading. It's overriding our systems." Elias turned to see Dax aiming his rifle at the sphere. "Step aside, Captain. That thing's a threat, and I'm ending it." "No!" Elias barked, stepping between Dax and the pedestal. "We don't know what we're dealing with." "Exactly," Dax growled, "which is why we can't risk it." Before the argument could escalate, the ground trembled violently. The tower groaned, cracks spiderwebbing across the walls. From the depths of the structure came a sound, a deep, guttural roar that sent ice-cold fear coursing through their veins. "We need to move!" shouted Dr. Cho. "Now!" As they fled the collapsing tower, Elias couldn't shake the feeling that they hadn't escaped alone. Something had followed them, something ancient, something hungry. Back aboard the Vanguard Horizon, the crew worked frantically to contain the spreading signal. But no matter what they tried, it continued to evolve, infiltrating every system, every circuit. And then, the lights went out. In the pitch-black silence, the voice returned. But this time, it wasn't pleading, it was laughing. The laughter was low at first, like a distant rumble of thunder rolling through the void. But it grew louder, richer, and more menacing, reverberating through the ship's darkened corridors. It wasn't just in their ears, it was inside their heads, slithering into their thoughts like an unwelcome guest. Elias stood frozen on the bridge, his fists clenched as the sound clawed at his sanity. The emergency lights flickered to life, casting the room in a blood-red glow. Kara was frantically working at her console, sweat dripping down her face despite the chill that had settled over the ship. "Systems are locking us out," she shouted, her voice trembling. "It's everywhere. Navigation, life support, even the engines. I don't know how it's doing this." Dr. Cho stumbled onto the bridge, his face pale. "Captain, we have a problem." "No kidding," Dax snapped, his rifle still gripped tightly in his hands. "What now?" Cho hesitated, his eyes darting toward Elias. "The sphere, it's no longer on the planet." Elias felt his stomach drop. "What do you mean?" "It's here," Cho said, his voice barely above a whisper. On the ship. For a moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the emergency lights and the occasional crackle of static from the comms. Then, as if on cue, the laughter stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse, thick and oppressive, pressing down on them like a physical weight. "Captain," Kara said, her voice shaking. "We've got movement on Deck 3. Something's spreading." Elias didn't need to ask what she meant. He could feel it, the same presence he'd felt in the tower, cold and alien, but now stronger, more invasive. Whatever they had awakened, it was no longer confined to the sphere. It was loose. "Dax, with me," Elias ordered, grabbing a sidearm from the weapons locker. "Kara, stay here and try to regain control of the systems. Cho, see if you can figure out what the hell we're dealing with." "You're not seriously going down there," Kara protested, her eyes wide with fear. "We should seal off the deck and eject it into space." "And risk taking half the ship with it?" Elias shot back. "No. We contain this thing, whatever it is, before it spreads any further." Dax nodded grimly, his rifle at the ready. "Let's move." Deck 3 was eerily quiet. The usual hum of machinery was absent, replaced by an unnatural stillness that set Elias's nerves on edge. The corridor walls were slick with a strange black substance, glistening like oil but pulsing faintly, as if alive. It spread across the floor and ceiling in vein-like patterns, branching out in every direction. "What the hell is this?" Dax muttered, his boots squelching against the organic-looking growth. Elias didn't answer. His focus was on the shadows ahead, where the dim emergency lights barely penetrated. He could feel the presence growing stronger, an almost tangible weight pressing against his chest. Every instinct screamed at him to turn back, but he forced himself to press on. They rounded a corner and froze. The black substance had coalesced into a massive, pulsating mass at the far end of the corridor. Tendrils snaked out from it, writhing and twitching as if searching for something, or someone. And in the center of the mass, partially absorbed into its grotesque form, was one of the crew. "Dear God," Dax whispered, his grip tightening on his rifle. The crewman's face was twisted in agony, his mouth open in a silent scream. His body jerked spasmodically as the tendrils burrowed deeper into his flesh, merging him with the entity. His eyes, once human, now glowed with the same eerie light as the carvings in the tower. "Help!" "Me," the crewman rasped, his voice distorted and inhuman. Elias raised his weapon, his hand trembling. "What is this thing? What does it want?" The crewman's head twitched unnaturally, his glowing eyes locking onto Elias. "We are becoming," he said, his voice layered with countless others. "You brought us here. You opened the door. Now, you will join us." Before Elias could react, the tendrils lashed out, moving with impossible speed. One wrapped around his wrist, yanking him forward, while another struck Dax's rifle, sending it clattering to the floor. Dax fired his sidearm wildly, the shots tearing into the mass, but having little effect. "Captain!" Dax shouted, grabbing Elias and pulling him free. The tendril recoiled, but not before leaving a searing burn on Elias's arm. "We need to fall back," Elias gasped, his heart pounding. "Now!" They retreated down the corridor, the tendrils pursuing them with relentless determination. The black substance spread faster now, overtaking the walls and ceiling, cutting off their escape routes one by one. By the time they reached the lift, it was clear the entity was learning, adapting to their movements. As the lift doors closed, Elias caught one last glimpse of the infected crewman. His body was now fully integrated into the mass, his features barely recognizable. But his glowing eyes remained fixed on Elias, filled with a chilling mixture of hatred and hunger. Back on the bridge, Chaos reigned. The black substance had begun to infiltrate the upper decks, seeping through vents and cracks in the bulkheads. Kara was frantically typing at her console, trying to override the ship's failing systems, while Cho examined a sample of the substance under a portable microscope. "It's not just alive," Cho said, his voice strained. "It's intelligent. It's rewriting the ship's systems on a molecular level, converting everything, metal, circuitry, even organic matter, into itself." "How do we stop it?" Elias demanded, clutching his burned arm. Cho shook his head. "I don't know if we can. This isn't just a parasite. It's a hive mind, a collective consciousness, and it's using the ship to grow." "So we blow it to hell," Dax growled, his rifle slung over his shoulder. "Set the reactor to overload and take this thing out before it reaches Earth." Elias hesitated. The thought of destroying the Vanguard Horizon, along with its crew, was unthinkable. But as he looked around the bridge, at the fear etched into his crew's faces, he realized they might not have a choice. Before he could give the order, the lights flickered again, and the voice returned. But this time, it wasn't laughing. It was screaming. The sound was deafening, a cacophony of rage and despair that shook the ship to its core. The black substance surged forward, faster than ever, consuming everything in its path. And then, as the bridge was plunged into darkness, the voice spoke one final time. "You cannot escape. You cannot fight. You will become us." And then silence. Elias opened his eyes to find himself alone. The bridge was gone, replaced by the same featureless void he had seen before. The sphere floated before him, its tendrils now fully extended, their light pulsing with malevolent intent. "You brought us here," the voice said, echoing all around him. "Now you will pay the price." Elias clenched his fists, his jaw tightening. "Not if I stop you first." The sphere pulsed, its light intensifying. "You cannot stop what has already begun. Your kind will fall, your world will burn, and we will rise." But as the tendrils closed in, Elias felt a spark of defiance ignite within him. If humanity was to survive, he would have to find a way to fight back, even if it meant sacrificing everything. The battle wasn't over. Not yet. Elias braced himself, his mind racing for a plan. The void around him seemed to pulse with the entity's presence, its tendrils tightening their grip on reality itself. But deep within that oppressive darkness, Elias felt something stir, a flicker of hope, buried beneath layers of fear and despair. "You think you've won," he said, his voice steady despite the pounding in his chest. "But you don't know us. You don't know what humans are capable of." The sphere's light dimmed momentarily, as if considering his words. Then the voice returned, colder than before. "Your defiance is meaningless. You are but a fragment of flesh and thought. We are infinite. We are inevitable." Elias took a step forward, his fists clenched. "You might be infinite, but you're not invincible. Everything has a weakness, and I'll find yours." The void trembled, the tendrils recoiling slightly. For the first time, the entity seemed uncertain. But before Elias could press further, the world around him shattered like glass, and he was yanked back into reality. He awoke on the bridge, gasping for air. The emergency lights were still flickering, casting eerie shadows across the room. Kara was slumped over her console, unconscious but breathing. Dax stood nearby, his rifle aimed at the door, which was now completely engulfed by the black substance. Dr. Cho was crouched beside Kara, checking her vitals. "Elias," Dax barked, relief flashing across his face. "You're alive. Thought we lost you there for a second." Elias sat up, wincing as pain shot through his arm where the tendril had burned him. "What happened?" "The thing, whatever it is, it's spreading faster," Dax said grimly. "We've lost contact with the lower decks. It's like the ship's being eaten from the inside out." Elias forced himself to his feet, his mind still reeling from the encounter in the void. We need to stop it, now. How? Cho asked, his voice tinged with desperation. It's taken over everything, our systems, our crew, even the damn ship itself. There's nothing left to fight. There's always something, Elias said, his tone firm. He turned to Kara, gently shaking her awake. Kara, can you hear me? She groaned, her eyes fluttering open. Captain, what? We need you, Elias said, his voice soft but urgent. Can you access the reactor controls? Kara blinked, her gaze unfocused. I think so. But why? What are you planning? Elias hesitated, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. If we can't contain this thing, we'll have to destroy the ship. We can't let it reach Earth. Kara's eyes widened, and she shook her head weakly. No, there has to be another way. If there is, we'll find it, Elias promised. But we need a backup plan. Can you do it? After a long moment, Kara nodded. I'll try. As she began working on her console, Elias turned to Cho. What about the sphere? Is there any way to sever its connection to the ship? Cho frowned, rubbing his temples. The sphere isn't just connected to the ship, it is the ship now. Its influence has integrated with every system, every circuit. If we destroy the sphere, we might be able to stop it, but there's no guarantee it'll work. It's a risk we'll have to take, Elias said. Where's the sphere now? Deck 5, Cho replied. But getting there won't be easy. That stuff is everywhere. Elias looked at Dax, who gave a grim nod. We'll make it. We don't have a choice. The journey to Deck 5 was a nightmare. The black substance had consumed nearly every corridor, transforming the once sterile walls of the Vanguard Horizon into a grotesque, pulsating labyrinth. The air was thick with an acrid stench, and the faint sound of whispers echoed all around them, growing louder with each step. Dax led the way, his rifle at the ready. Elias followed close behind, his sidearm drawn, while Cho brought up the rear, clutching a makeshift flamethrower cobbled together from engineering supplies. They moved cautiously, every shadow a potential threat. As they approached the entrance to Deck 5, the whispers coalesced into a single voice, the same voice that had haunted Elias since the tower. You cannot stop us, it said, its tone mocking. You delay the inevitable. Your resistance is amusing. Yeah, well, laugh it up, Dax muttered, firing a burst of plasma at a cluster of tendrils blocking their path. The tendrils writhed and shrieked as they burned, but more quickly grew to take their place. Keep moving, Elias ordered, blasting another tendril that lashed out toward Cho. We're almost there. They reached the door to the reactor chamber, only to find it sealed shut, the black substance oozing through the cracks. Elias slammed his fist against the control panel, but it was unresponsive. Damn it, he growled. Cho, can you get this open? Cho stepped forward, examining the door. I can try, but it'll take time. We don't have time, Dax said, his eyes scanning the corridor. The whispers were growing louder, and the walls seemed to ripple as if alive. They're coming. Elias gritted his teeth, his mind racing. Cho, do what you can. Dax, cover him. I'll hold them off. Dax gave him a look. You sure about this, Captain? Just do it, Elias snapped, raising his weapon. The first wave came moments later, twisted, half-human figures emerging from the shadows, their bodies fused with the black substance. Their glowing eyes burned with unnatural light, and their movements were jerky and erratic, like puppets on frayed strings. Elias fired, each shot finding its mark, but the creatures kept coming. Dax joined in, his rifle spitting plasma bolts that tore through the advancing horde. But for every creature they killed, 2 more took its place. Hurry up, Cho, Dax shouted, reloading his weapon. I'm trying, Cho snapped, sparks flying from the control panel as he worked. This thing's completely fried. Elias felt a tendril wrap around his ankle and fired downward, severing it. He stumbled back, his breathing ragged. We can't hold them much longer. Got it, Cho yelled as the door hissed open. Go, go, go! They rushed inside, sealing the door behind them. The reactor chamber was bathed in a sickly green light, the sphere floating at its center. Tendrils extended from it, connecting to the walls, the floor, the very heart of the ship. Elias stared at the sphere, his jaw tightening. This ends now. He raised his weapon, but before he could fire, the sphere pulsed, and the voice returned, louder than ever. You cannot destroy us, it said, its tone filled with fury. We are beyond your comprehension, beyond your reach. Elias ignored it, stepping closer. Maybe, but you're not beyond our determination. With that, he pulled the trigger. The shot struck the sphere dead center, and for a moment, nothing happened. Then the entire chamber shook violently, and the tendrils began to writhe uncontrollably. The sphere's light flickered, its surface cracking like glass. You will pay, the voice hissed, fading into static. Elias turned to the others. We need to get to the escape pods, now. As they fled the reactor chamber, the ship began to collapse around them, the black substance disintegrating into ash. But Elias knew this wasn't over. Whatever they had unleashed, it wasn't gone. It was waiting, and it would return.